Thank you, councillors and staff. We have 4 letters which will be read out prior to the meeting. This will be instead of the forum, or will be part of the forum which we normally have prior to our meeting. So I'm going to ask the General Manager if he would like to proceed with the letters. Thank you.
Thank you. The first letter is from Kirsty Wilkes and Ken Shiner, Chairman and Secretary of the Culcairn Community Development Committee. The Greater Hume Shire Councillors, General Manager and Council Staff. Culcairn Solar Farm Project by Neone. Earlier in 2020, Neone approached members of the Culcairn Community Development Committee to meet and explain the possible community benefit fund as part of the proposed development of the Culcairn Solar Farm should the project be approved. We realise that a community benefit fund is part of all of Neone's approved renewable projects, and so far Neone is the only company involved in the 4 solar farm projects in our Shire to present this fund as part of their project proposal. All those present at the meeting were very excited about the possibility of this sort of funding being available to our community. The concept of a community benefit fund may have changed since because of input from the council, but the chairman and myself of the Culcairn Community Development Committee, who have been involved in this discussion with Neone, are very keen to see this community benefit fund come into fruition. From the way Neone have explained recently, the funds will be held specifically earmarked for Culcairn and projects within the Culcairn area and be administered by a group with representation by Greater Hume Shire, Neone and community members such as the Community Development Committee for projects. This is a fantastic opportunity for the Culcairn community to have access to money for projects that have missed out on funding previously. There are many possibilities that have been mentioned: a town master plan, silo art, sponsorships for local high school students to further study, etc. The bucket list is quite long. Also, the ability to have funds put towards other grant applications would increase the likelihood of Culcairn being able to realise much larger projects which are out of our reach at the moment. As part of the Culcairn Community Development Committee, we are keen to see these funds solely used in Culcairn. Our half, we understand that we would share the Community Benefit Fund with Walla Walla. We request that our councillors see the commitment of Neone and our committee to work together, as this project can positively benefit as many people as possible in the Culcairn area, with not just business opportunities and employment, but funding from community enhancing projects around Culcairn. Respectfully, Ken Shiner, Chairman, Kirsty Wilkes, Secretary, Culcairn Community Development Committee, and the letter was dated the 2nd of October. The next letter is from Feuerhart Pastoral Company, Stephen and Sharon Feuerhart and family. Dear Colin and Stephen, I would appreciate if you could please distribute to councillors the following information to be read prior to the commencement of the extraordinary meeting scheduled for tomorrow night. If you wish to discuss further, please do not hesitate to contact us. Dear Mayor and Councillors, I refer to the agenda for the extraordinary meeting of Greater Hume Shire Council to be held at Holbrook on Wednesday the 7th of October. Item number 1, Environment and Planning Proposed Voluntary Planning Agreement, Culcairn Solar Farm, SSD 10288 Neone. Our family continues to hold many concerns towards the potential ramifications of this massive development, not only on ourselves and other neighbouring ratepayers, but also on council infrastructure and functions that will be greatly affect our business, bringing associated cost. We believe the VPA agreement is strongly a matter of public interest to ensure that council achieves suitable financial support to overcome the challenges it faces, such as road repairs, weed management, EPA functions, emergency or other unforeseen issues, and that council's ability to manage these issues are not replaced with a community benefit funds governed or dictated outside the control of council that may potentially move funds away from an area of need. I direct council to minute number 5469 of the ordinary meeting of the Greater Hume Shire Council on Wednesday the 20th of November 2019, at which time it was resolved that council authorise the General Manager and the Director of Environment and Planning to undertake further negotiations with Neone in respect to a voluntary planning agreement for the proposed Culcairn solar farm. At a future ordinary meeting of council, consider as an open agenda item whether to accept a VPA with Neown for the proposed Culcairn solar farm, and the appropriate bodies be advised of these negotiations. It is our family's concern that the item being heard in the extraordinary meeting as a confidential closed council item contradicts this resolution, and that the intention of this previous motion was to ensure that the VPA decisions be clear and transparent, as would be the case with the administration of development contributions under the Greater Hume Shire Council Section 712 Development Contribution Plan 2019. Council has previously asserted that the proposed solar farm developers should be required to fund a development contribution commensurate with Council's development contribution plan for the proposed solar farm developments within Greater Hume Shire. It is therefore our view that Council should uphold the previous resolution, and this matter should be referred as an open item with the report to an ordinary meeting of Council for all to see. Regards, Stephen and Sharon Feuerhart and family. That was dated yesterday's date, 6th of October. And the third letter is from Jonathan Schoff, dated today's date. Dear Greater Hume Shire, Neown VPA. As the initial landowner for the Culcairn solar farm, I was approached by many renewable development companies. I knew a state significant development did not have to provide any financial assistance to council. In saying that, I believe this is a one-off opportunity never to be repeated in my lifetime, and asked each company what their views were towards a VPA that would benefit my communities of Culcairn and Walla Walla, which my family have called home for over 100 years. Neown showed me their business model, which has a community benefit fund attached to all of their projects. Neown also provided me with references and contact details of members from other communities who shared with me how their community had benefited from outside funds not attached to council's financial limitations. I disagree with council and councillors who voted the Greater Hume Shire be the only recipients of the VPA, as recommended by the Director of Planning in his February and June 2020 reports to council. I asked Neown to support my community and council within their VPA, which Neown honoured. I now ask council and councillors, particularly North Ward councillors, Deputy Meyer, Doug Meyer, Terry Weston and Annex Schul, to support and honour Neown's voluntary planning application and community benefit fund. Regards, Jonathan Schoff. And the final piece of correspondence of the four was again dated today's date from Lawrence Schoff. Dear Greater Hume Shire Council, Culcairn Solar Farm, Neown Community Benefit Fund. I support the Culcairn Solar Farm and Neown's Community Benefit Fund for Culcairn and Walla Walla. The CBF is a wonderful opportunity for my community to grow and flourish. Neown does not need to provide council or the community with a voluntary planning agreement. I disagree with Greater Hume Shire councillors and staff who believe the CBF should be given to council only. I believe council would not use the funds to benefit Culcairn and Walla Walla. Neown is the only renewable energy developer within Greater Hume Shire Council offering a CBF. Neown's VPA surpasses the 1% development levy required by GHS. I do not believe councillors remained independent with this project. Council implemented issues raised by an objector and reduced the Culcairn solar farm's size, June 2020 council minutes. Due to the council's actions, a landowner has been removed from the project, the sheep grazing opportunity has been reduced, and those eligible for the construction compensation payment has been decreased. I believe these actions could justify council receiving a decreased VPA, while the CBF remains as proposed by Neown in their environmental impact statement. The anti-solar group have circulated misinformation and induced fear around this project. Consequently, community benefit members have not been able to voice their support and excitement publicly for the CBF. I am an advocate for climate action in my community of Culcairn and Walla Walla. As the next generation, I ask all councillors move beyond the past and look towards a sustainable future by approving NEON's voluntary planning agreement and community benefit fund. Kind regards, Lauren Choff.
Thank you very much. Now I'm just going to read this little forward up here again to remind you all, in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this council meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Council's web page for public information. All present today are reminded that by speaking you are agreeing to your view and comments being recorded and published. You are also reminded that if or when speaking you are to be respectful to others and use appropriate language. Greater Hume Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting. Item number 1, I therefore open the meeting, declare it open, and I call on Councillor Shulg to lead us in prayer. Thank you, Councillor Shulg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heavenly Father, please be with us this evening and guide us with clear hearts and minds on decisions presented on the agenda. Continue to guide us through our term in representing our community of Greater Hume, and thank you for the rain. Amen.
Acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present. Item number 4, we don't have any apologies, but are there applications for leave of absence by councillors? Nil? Any disclosures of interests? Thank you. I think that's noted. Thank you. Reports from officers, Part A for determination. Governance item 1 and to begin with.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to item number 1, there are 2 proposed motions for conference that the first one Councillor Myers put forward and the second one Councillor Quinn has put forward. And I suppose there's an opportunity for other councillors, if they have an item that they would like to put forward tonight, that we might be able to craft a motion around if there are any additional ones.
There is a recommendation there, councillors.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
So moved, Councillor Meyer. Seconded, Councillor Quinn. Yes.
Exceptionally hard, but do you think it'll tick the box or not?
Well, I intend to use a couple of examples in the notes that will accompany it. But look, if you wish to strengthen it in some way, I'm happy to. Well, obviously, I'm in your hands, so.
A lot of dealings in recent times with the local land service boards, and you know, if you said it was they were unhelpful, it'd be an understatement. Now, somehow or other, we've got to get it across the board for safety reasons, particularly bushfires. All bits of Crown land have got to be available to be crossed. At times, if there's got to be a crossing made through a creek or something, it's got to be adapted quickly, etc. None of this come out in the bushfire. None of these things, I better correct the English thing on the airways, none of these things seem to have come out in the Bushfire Royal Commission, mainly because the people doing that commission are not on the ground.
Yeah.
You've got to be on the ground to see these things. And
Yeah, well, as I said, I can certainly use the examples that you've raised here in the note. But look, to some extent, I guess that issue is possibly a little bit different to the intent of this motion. But look, one of the major issues is it's a lack of resourcing that's causing part of the problem, and there's such a backlog, particularly around things like, trying to get Crown land on the market for sale. For example, the Gindera watering place, which is prime for residential development, which, I think we tracked back that the first time Hume Shire made some representations to Crown Lands about that particular land was in 1981, and we're still, no further advanced. And then, closed road applications. Currently they're saying there's a 4-year backlog of Crown, people wanting to acquire Crown lands, which is just, that's a ridiculous state of affairs that it should take so long for, an unused Crown land to actually be, dealt with and provide someone the opportunity to use it and maintain it. Your issue around, trying to get access for a crossing in an area of Crown land for firefighting purposes is probably a little bit different, but I think the same thing applies in that it's just so complicated when you're trying to get any resolutions around Crown land, and there needs to be a better system put in place. But I think we can draw a lot of that out in the note, in some of the examples that we give in a note.
Notes to the motion.
Notes to the motion, yeah.
I honestly believe that they don't want to do it. An example that I used, there was no doubt the hierarchy of the establishment agreed with Tony Quinn. Down the bottom, the people who had the power just didn't want to do it, and it's not. And so even your survey, Mr. GM, I wonder is it, and we know the backlog on obtaining Crown roads, etc. It's 4 years wait. But is it part of their philosophy that they're determined they don't want to do it? I mean, you can't make that judgment call. I don't expect you to make it, but I think part of it is.
Look, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that more recently some of the staff have tried to be helpful as to provide councils with some options to, to facilitate some of those closures. I think it is more of a resourcing issue, really. And there's just, such a backlog that it's challenging for them. But as I said, it's whether it's trying to get approval to do something simple like what you're trying to do, or whether it's trying to get, some other project on the way. It's just a. And look, I suppose the most disappointing thing is that, we've had a review of the Crown Lands Act and things were supposed to be put in place to cut red tape and expedite issues, and that hasn't necessarily shown through. Although, when we are undertaking works on Crown lands that we're the trustee of, it has been streamlined, and we are, obviously working through those more expediently now because we don't have to get Crown lands to sign off on those necessarily. But there's a lot of other issues that there has been no improvement, or even it's gone backwards, and that's the disappointing part.
Madam Mayor, can I just ask
Pardon?
a question? With the
Yes.
effect, the words, I did think it was rather soft, Councillor Quinn, effective and timely matter. Can we put some stronger words there, and especially in cases of unprecedented is the trendy word, circumstances such as fires or some sort of emergencies? Can that be included? I know you're putting a note, but effective and timely manner, I mean, that can still mean it could take, instead of 10 years, it might only be 8. Can we find some stronger words for there? Thank you.
Well, I'm in your hands, Councillor Shulk.
I'd have to think about it a bit longer.
I'd take the word lobby out and make it a stronger word. Request, urgent.
Urgently request. Then you.
Urgently request.
Right,
the state government to adequately resource the Department of Development. That's slightly strong wording.
dealt with,
Lobby means they're just going to.
Can we put more efficient manner?
Expected in time. Anyway.
can we put so as to reduce the large backlog of applications?
Yes, that's a bit better. But no, we know that. Does that sound a bit better, Councillor Quinn?
Yes, everybody that chips in makes it through, but it's sort of, well, for it to get legs, it's got to have broad-based support, and we're sending it to a local government conference, and the Quinn bulldozer worked in the past, but it doesn't work anymore. So it's got to be a different approach, and the GM has outlined it. It's if it's resources they need, well, so be it. But it's a very serious matter that it's taken so long for us to get access to. I'm not talking about the fire scene there. Access to Crown lands, you know, Crown Road that wants converting over to take 4 years is just.
Well, how does the mover feel about the change of words?
I
You,
don't have a problem, Madam Mayor, because we won't be talking to it. We won't be debating it. There's not going to be any time.
No,
It's online
no.
for about 1 hour and after that.
yeah.
I think you can word it as strong as you like.
Yes, I think that's probably okay up there. Yeah,
Councillor Meyer, will you be able to get across the point that it's gone up 20% to all of us?
If you give me the background, you know I can work wonders, Councillor Quinn. I haven't asked a resolution at conference yet.
But has there been any effect on them?
You know?
Has there been any
Well,
effect
I
on
think all the policies that we made still stand there.
use your microphone, please.
I'm sorry about that, Madam Mayor. What would you like me to say?
Well, I'll put the motion. I think that's the best thing to do. If there is no further comment, all those in favour? Any opposition? Carried. Thank you. Now, we have item number 2, expressions of interest for the property 124 Albury Street, Holbrook. Thank you. I
I'll
think that
second
would
it.
be a good idea. You'll move Councillor Hicks and Councillor Parker that we go into closed council. All those in favour?
Mayor, I think there's parts of this, particularly the straight out business part, we should discuss in open council. It's a business decision of council, but in my opinion it's competing with the normal business that happens elsewhere in the world, and I don't think it's our core business, so I'd like to see it discussed, that part discussed at open council.
Well, I have put the motion and everybody voted in favour and you've voted against, so we're at that point. So we will be proceeding. Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Mr General Manager?
On which issue, Madam
Item number 2, the expressions of interest.
Mayor?
We've gone into closed.
No, we're not in closed council at the moment. We've only referred it to closed
Oh,
council.
only referred it, sorry.
So presumably you're moving on to the next item.
Yeah. Item number 1, environment and planning. There is a report there. Mr Kane, would you like to speak?
Just before Mr Kane speaks, oh no, sorry, it's a different report, sorry.
I'm happy to take any questions, Madam Mayor. Originally, council the council staff was requested to have this item be considered in closed council. And then, as councillors are aware, there was a representation made that it should be made in open council. And I contacted Neon and they have agreed for it to be brought into open council. So I'm happy to answer any questions that councillors might have in relation to the report.
Councillor Quinn?
Madam Mayor, to the town planner, couldn't think of the other term, sorry, Mr Director. If council approves this recommendation tonight, does that go straight to the New South Wales Planning, or?
I might just talk a little bit about the process, I think. No, it wouldn't go straight to New South Wales Planning, because what's before council tonight is really only the offer is really the money involved in the VPA and the Community Benefits Fund. There's no detail behind that yet. That's still got to be worked out. And there is a draft that's going back and forward between council and NEO for the VPA component. And I would say that that's still got a little bit of a way to go before it's settled between council staff and NEO. And then the process then is that we've been sending that to the Department of Planning's administration to see whether they're comfortable with the VPA. And if they're comfortable with the VPA will go through a public exhibition process after the determination of the IPC. So that's how the department have expressed to me that they would like to see it happen. So obviously if one of these solar farms, I'm talking generally now, not NEO particularly, was to be refused by the IPC, there's no reason to exhibit the VPA because it's not going to happen. So after the determination, there will be a public exhibition process. Those comments will be brought back to council and the department, and then the VPA would be made. But it's a long way away yet, the NEON and VPA with council. There's still quite a lot of negotiations to be done about the mechanics about how the VPA will work.
Who will be involved?
Well, a lot of those is happening directly with the General Manager and I and the company. But yes, who would be involved? What sort of projects would be paid from the VPA? So the department have expressed a desire that the VPA funds be expended in proximity to the development. So that's been one of the issues that have been raised in some of the submissions that are made tonight. So even aside from the community benefit funds, the VPAs will have requirements that, you know, there's a proximity requirement that those monies get spent in the vicinity of the actual development. And there'll be a number that specifies what kilometre radius that would be, but not a very big one. So.
Having listened, I hope, fairly diligently to what you've said, is my interpretation correct whereby the department could send NEON to the independent panel and get that done and dusted before the VPA is?
Yes, that's correct. But what will happen is when something's referred to the IPC, there's an assessment report, just like I do for councillors with our development applications. And with that assessment report is conditions of consent, proposed conditions of consent. The IPC don't draft the conditions of consent. The Department of Planning do. And in those draft conditions will be a conditions that says that NEON will enter into a VPA and possibly a community benefits fund in relation to this. And so if it then got passed by the IPC, then the VPA is enshrined in the conditions of consent, and then the VPA would go through the public exhibition process, and then be made subsequent to the IPC. So the IPC will be aware that there's negotiations going on with a VPA, and there would be a draft condition put before them.
What I'm endeavouring, Madam Mayor, to find out is what is the hold-up? These are major developments. They could bring in a lot of money to the Shire. Are the panel that far behind? Maybe like the Crown Roads mob, I don't know, but they just recently approved the Pilliga Scrub oil basin. Narrabri, couldn't think of it, thanks, Madam Mayor. So I'm just wondering, I personally don't want to see things held up but I think the way the directors explained it, this is independent of what the independent panel might do, sort of thing. This only comes in if the independent panel gives it the tick.
The VPA and the CPF wouldn't be holding up the determination, Councillor Quinn. It wouldn't be a factor, really. They're just going to condition that, and then that's going to happen afterwards. So it's not a reason for a hold-up.
Just a minute. Councillor Schultz got a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With some of the letters that were read, or the letters that were read out earlier, there's just a question I have on the Lauren's letter about the reduction of the solar farm size due to some comments made back in June. So the councillors haven't been informed of that. So when was that actually reduced? And those extra things that we haven't been able to take into consideration until just now?
Well, look, at the last meeting, or at the workshop that we had, I think I did make some reference to the fact that yes, it had been reduced in size, but all of those issues, you might have been at that workshop. No. Okay, so I apologise for that. So basically, at that workshop, where we got to was that we had a discussion around who was going to represent council at the IPC hearing, and the instructions that we got from councillors at the workshop was to go back to New South Wales Planning and get a comprehensive list of all of the changes that had happened with all of the solar farms, so that they could be presented to council and enable council to form a response that would be made to the IPC. So that obviously will, form part of that process. That when Mr. Kane is preparing a response or preparing a statement for the IPC, which our intent was to get some approval from council of before that hearing, that we would be able to articulate to councillors before that statement was finalised all of the changes that have been made to the 3 solar farm developments that are currently before New South Wales Planning.
But then that hasn't come yet, and we're to make a decision tonight. So
yeah, but this is only making a decision on the VPA and the Community Benefit Fund around the numbers.
Okay.
And whether it's yeah, so really, I guess there's been quite a bit of discussion with the other 2 solar farm developers. All of the contributions basically are within the voluntary planning agreement. In Neone's case, their preference was to have all of the contributions to council outside the VPA and just have a community benefit fund. Mm-hmm. So where we've got to, and as Mr. Kane pointed out in his report, what they were saying, well, if you leave it all in the VPA, then we're only going to offer you 6.6 million. Bearing in mind it's a voluntary planning agreement.
Yes.
Whereas if you have part of it in and part of it out, then the total payment will be 9.759 based on the CIV of 636 million. So really what we're here tonight about is just determining whether we're happy with that mix of funding and whether we're happy with the quantum of funding, because as Mr Kane has said, you know, the mechanics around how the community benefit fund will be set up and what the projects will be for the VPA portion will come at a later date. We're not at that point yet.
Sorry, there was one other thing, Mr Kane touched on it, was the wording in the vicinity of the development. So that's to be determined with the numbers of how many Ks that can be spread, those funds can be spread then.
Yes, and it won't be very far. Like, I'm yet to bring back one VPA is largely determined, but it had a number in there that, just to give councillors an idea, of 15 kilometres of the development. And so it'll be some sort of number within that vicinity.
Madam Mayor, could I make one point of clarification, please? The group referred to or insinuated in the statements have always opposed solar developments. We have not opposed VPA or community benefit funds. We've always looked at that as being a totally separate issue to solar farms.
I would like to move the recommendation. Well, I'll second it then.
I just would like to make a couple of comments regarding the letters that were sent in. One, that, you know, all of us are, you know, I think quite open to sustainable futures, especially within our shire, and very conscious of the impact that it's having on our rural farmland. And if we were really serious about sustainable future, we'd be talking about nuclear energy. That's just a statement. And the second one was, yeah, I guess the radius around, you know, one of the comments was, you know, moving forward, not looking back. Well, if we're looking forward, we should be looking at it as a whole shire rather than an area of 15 kilometres around a development. Just a comment. Thank you.
Yes, could I just make a comment? I'm quite happy with this letter from Anne Frederick, setting out how Neon would like to see everything set up, because I think involving the community will be very important.
All right, prepared to vote now, councillors. Where are we? Recommendations. Two parts, set up on the screen. Prepared to vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Unanimous. This junction